Part 40. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Xiao. Chapter 406. The golden tiles and golden palace are invisible to the emperor. Once you leave the Meridian Gate, I will be the Hunyuan Thunderbolt Hand. Su Tong hummed a little tune and jumped towards the palace gate. It can be seen that he is in a good mood. Not only is it a perfect opening, but today is Ma Hongwen's birthday. Although strictly speaking, Ma Hongwen's birthday has nothing to do with him, but isn't he now Ma Hongwen? Unfortunately, Ma Qi is still on duty, and the eldest grandmother lives outside the capital. Wherever I go, there are a group of spies behind me, so this birthday is destined to be a regret, and my wish to feel the warmth of family will be in vain. But even so, he was still very happy. Because there is still a small gift waiting for him today. I saw Su Tong get into the garden and find the agreed place. After a closer look, it turned out that Yang Qi was already sitting there waiting. After seeing Su Tong, Yang Qi immediately waved her hand. "Here you go, let's settle the matter. Let me tell you that I almost gave up my life for this thing." Yang Qi looked angry. I thought it was some great treasure that this big devil wanted to get so eagerly. Finally, I managed to steal it out. When I opened it, I instantly felt like I was being teased. You must know that the gate of the Ministry of Internal Affairs is not easy to enter. If I hadn't already set my sights on the geomantic treasure of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and made plans in advance, it would be a dream to get in such a short time. And because of this thing, I almost got caught and my life was on the line. Now she could no longer enter the Ministry of Internal Affairs. All her efforts had resulted in such a mess. She was going crazy. He didn't take such a big orb, and he wasn't tempted by such a big golden horse. In the end, I changed it to a tattered one, and naturally I felt it was not worth it. But when she saw the tatters in her eyes, and when she held it in Su Tong's hand, Su Tong instantly felt like she couldn't put it down for this inconspicuous metal box. This box is more exquisite than I thought. The fine dark patterns carved on it echo the inlaid and carved patterns, bringing an extremely special artistic beauty. Su Tong measured the box for a moment and then opened the box carefully. However, what is surprising is that what is contained in such an exquisite box is just a small seal. When I picked it up and looked at it, there were 4 words written on it: Qian Huang Royal Treasure. It is said that Emperor Qian was known as the Shiquan Old Man. His biggest hobby was stamping, so Zhangzi was the treasure of this old emperor. It is said that he had thousands of seals in his life, all of which were made by the contemporary seal carving masters. Even if they were made with no matter how precious the materials are, after he died, all these treasures were thrown into the corner of the Ministry of Internal Affairs to eat ashes. Yang Qi pouted and stood aside to complain about this stamping maniac. There are many rare and famous paintings and antiques that have been passed down from the palace on the black market. These things are all treasures worth thousands of gold. But when everyone opened the scroll and took a look, my dear, there were 10 chapters in each painting, and even the blank space in the landscape painting was stamped with a big mark. A masterpiece that has been handed down from generation to generation has been turned into a piece of garbage. Therefore, the price of any work stamped with Emperor Qian's seal on the black market, even if it is an authentic work by Tang Bohu, is often greatly discounted. As a thief, Yang Qi was obviously disdainful of Emperor Qian's trashing of things, including his seal. Su Tong picked up the Zhangzi and took a closer look. The Zhangzi was just an ordinary Zhangzi. There was nothing outstanding about it. The only precious thing might be the material of the Zhangzi itself. Strangeness. Through the life icon, I clearly see that this thing is of extraordinary value to me, but I don't think there is anything special about it. In doubt, Su Tong simply activated the life icon. In an instant, the color of the world in front of me was stripped away, and it fell into a grayish white. But there was a glistening golden light in his hand, but it was not a chapter, but a box. Seeing this, Su Tong threw away the seal and held the box to examine it. In the state of Minji and Kimin, strange textures appeared on the box, like flexible fish swimming between the gaps in the box. Twist your hands hard. Click. The box cracked instantly, and with Su Tong's twisting, it gradually lay flat into a flat board. The seemingly irregular lines above are also connected together to form a strange pattern. But it was not over. Su Tong tried to continue twisting, and the graphics on the panel kept changing. As long as he twisted one piece, the others would also be rearranged. The peculiar design is simply breathtaking. There is no doubt that the person who can design such an exquisite mechanism must have reached the pinnacle of achievement in this field. I remember that when Taoist Sun Long invited him to drink last time, he said that in the Ming Dynasty, Grand Masters were not just martial artists, but even some craftsmen had the opportunity to become Grand Masters. Su Tong now suspects that this box may be a remnant of that era. As the graphics changed, Su Tong's pupils were occupied by strange little people, as if he vaguely discovered something. "Who's over there?" Suddenly, a shout came from a distance, interrupting Su Tong to continue watching. He quickly put the things in his hands into the prop book, and when he glanced sideways, he saw two palace guards. The two guards also recognized Su Tong's identity, and their expressions changed. They thought it was a palace maid and the little eunuch having sex here, but they didn't expect it was the little ancestor. They immediately swallowed their words. He looked around with his eyes, turned around and ran away quickly. "You!" Yang Qi stared blankly at Su Tong, seeing with her own eyes that the box just now magically turned into a wooden board. Before she could see clearly what was on it, Su Tong put it away. "Master, what on earth is that?" Yang Qi stepped forward curiously and asked. "Nice one." Su Tong smiled slightly. "If I were you, I would escape from the palace tonight. If I don't leave, there will be chaos here. Of course, you can also consider seeking wealth through danger." In fact, when he first let Yang Qi enter the palace, he originally wanted her to verify whether there would still be immortal treasures in this world. But since his breakthrough in Kimin, Su Tong has discovered that there are no fairy treasures in this world at all. Now that she had helped herself steal this thing, her relationship with him would be settled. It's a pity that all the money he had today was given to Li 11, otherwise he could have given it to her as a reward. But it doesn't matter, I believe she should have gained quite a lot during her time in the palace. "Hey, if you say that, I'll leave tonight." Yang Qi pouted with a natural sense of cuteness. "I am a thief, not a big thief. The risk of taking chestnuts from the fire is too high. I'd better leave as soon as possible. Not only leaving the capital, I also want to go to Shanghai. Listen, they say that there is a movement for gender equality over there recently, and I want to go see what good things there are worth stealing." Su Tong nodded. Although he really wanted to say the last sentence, "How can a beautiful lady like you be a thief?" but thinking about it, it would be too inappropriate for him to say this now. After all, he had just enjoyed the convenience brought by Yang Qi. Put it this way, what is the difference between those LSBs who, after being released, lie in bed and persuade prostitutes to rehabilitate? That's fine, I wish you a safe journey. Su Tong Gong cupped his hands to say goodbye. Yang Qi pursed her lips and smiled, glanced behind Su Tong from the corner of her eye, and her face changed. "Someone is coming." After saying that, he ran away. Su Tong turned around casually, and his face suddenly fell. I saw the eldest princess leaning on a pillar nearby, looking at me with a half-smile. Seeing the eldest princess holding Fu Anning's human skin and staring directly at him, Su Tong immediately felt a dull pain in his neck again. I said, "It's only been a few days. If you don't need someone else to support me, I think Li 11 in our courtyard is pretty good. You see, he looks very smart." Su Tong walked forward and said, holding his neck, "Li 11. The eldest princess shook her head with a half-smile. Do you know why eunuchs are called purification and why they are also called castration? Su Tong shook his head. There is a hexagram in the Book of Changes, pig's tooth, good luck. This is originally a good hexagram, but from another perspective, when the wild boar is castrated, it will be tamed. The longer the black tiger lives, the longer it will live. The stronger his destiny is, but if he removes his momentum, even if he lives to be 100 years old, he will not be able to achieve greatness in the end. Is it difficult to become a great person? Su Tong thought, that's because you don't know how much trouble this thief will cause later. But after thinking about it, it seems that compared with someone like the eldest princess who has exceeded the scope of a grand master, it seems that she has not achieved anything great. After finally launching an unprecedented scale alien incident, he unexpectedly met a destined person like Master Shuigui. Think about it carefully and put it in another perspective. Perhaps the appearance of Li 11 also enhanced the Master's aura as the protagonist of destiny. Without him gathering the immortal aliens in the world, the Master would not be able to drag these dregs into hell together so smoothly. Just like Shen Gongbeo in the Romance of the Gods. The only difference is that Shen Gongbeo became a god in the end, but Li 11 was not so lucky and became a master in the end. Su Tong was thinking about it when he suddenly thought, no, who said this? But by the time he came to his senses, it was too late. He saw that the eldest princess had already clung to his back, blowing the cool wind into his ear. I'm very fast, please bear with me. Then your tea-girl needs to find another place to bite her, ah. That night, Su Tong dragged his tired body back home, opened the door and walked inside. As a result, he saw Mr. Wen Yuan sitting in the yard waiting for him after just 2 steps. Seeing Su Tong come back, Mr. Venfan glanced at Su Tong's forehead, his eyes filled with worry again, sighed deeply, looked in the direction of the palace and said, the dragon is going to die. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 407. Su Tong followed Mr. Wen Yuan's gaze and stood aside silently. He did not say any words to comfort or tease him, but just stayed with the old gentleman silently. Yes, such a decadent dynasty. Such a person only knows how to exploit people. The Manchu Qing dynasty was a country where the rich and powerful enslaved the common people. This stupid country is ignorant and closed off. If it's broken, so there's nothing to regret. Su Tong can think this way, because he stands in the future and knows how bright the new era will be. We know that in the future, countless unknown heroes will use their lives to catch up with the 100 years behind us and realize the renaissance of Chinese civilization. Therefore, he does not recognize, understand, or like this era. So what if it sucks? In the end I just pat my butt and walk away. It's just that I can comment on history from the perspective of the future, although doing so is being a hooligan. But Mr. Wen Yuan can't. He was born in this era and died in this era. He doesn't know what the future will look like. He only knows that the Datong dynasty has fallen, and his family will also die. Mr. Wen Yuan's life was very difficult. It is clear that he has great talent and can make great achievements. But just because he made a careless friend, he was wrongly sentenced to prison by the emperor and never had an official career again. 10 years of hard study turned into nothing. The most ridiculous thing is that even though the emperor later learned that he was unjustly accused, for the sake of face and the so-called royal dignity, instead of rehabilitating him, he was never hired. For such a dog emperor, Mr. Wen Yuan still needs to kneel down to thank the emperor for sparing his life. Mr. Wen Yuan, who had nothing, looked at his classmates who were not as talented as him and were on the high school gold medal list one after another, but he was living on the streets, making a living by selling calligraphy. If he wasn't desperate, why would he be willing to be a gentleman to a bastard like Ma Hongwen? Fortunately, he learned astonishingly throughout his life, and after his death he walked on the Shinto path in a daze. In the eyes of others, this may be an unenviable opportunity. But for Mr. Wen-I-Yuan, it was extremely cruel. After his death, he could not sleep peacefully, and he could only watch the country and family destroyed, the mountains and rivers shattered, and the great dynasty perished. Mr. Wen-I-Yuan raised his head and looked at the sky in the distance, and a meteor fell from above his head. The Forbidden Palace, which used to be filled with dragon energy, has now eclipsed it. Ever since the young emperor was deposed by the Empress Dowager Shenxi, the thin real dragon was completely destroyed. So far, the weak dragon energy is hovering over the Forbidden City, but it can no longer gather a new dragon. Mr. Wen-I-Yuan knew that Long was dead. There will be no more true dragons in the world, no more emperors, and the Datong dynasty will also collapse. For a moment, Mr. Fan looked helpless and bitter. You seem to be in poor health recently. I always feel that your energy and blood are always very weak. After a brief silence, Mr. Wen-I-Yuan finally realized that there was something more important. He looked at the black mark on Su Tong's forehead, which seemed to be much heavier than before, which made him worried about Su Tong's future safety. Well, it's not a big problem. Su Tong touched his forehead and said with a smile. No. The problem is very serious. It is a matter of life and death. Don't take it seriously. Mr. Wen-I-Yuan frowned, his expression was very serious, and he didn't like Su Tong's unattractive appearance. Seeing that the old gentleman was angry, Su Tong hurriedly explained, Sir, you are worried about me, of course I know it, but the powerful Sun Long Taoist has already said that this is my fate, and I can't avoid it. Then did the Sun Long Taoist tell me if he had a solution? Because Su Tong had been pulling Taoist Sun Long's tiger skin to cover himself, Mr. Wen-I-Yuan didn't know at this moment that the person he was cooperating with was actually his student. If Mr. Wen-I-Yuan knew that his student alone had absorbed 8/10 of the merits, I don't know what his expression would be. Yes, he gave me a fake death pill and told me to take it if necessary to fake death and escape. Su Tong explained to the old gentleman sincerely. That's it? After hearing Su Tong's explanation, the big stone in Mr. Wen-I-Yuan's heart finally fell. But if that was all, he wasn't worried. I've been hearing a lot of bad noises lately, especially around the house, with a lot of messy people staring. Since Mr. Wen-I-Yuan gained the merits of incense, he has been able to hear more things, and he can even go out freely as long as he wants. Because Fuxian's reputation is getting stronger and stronger, there are sculptures of Fuxian everywhere. Strictly speaking, he is no longer a house god. Rather, he is a god with merit cards and a temple. He is only one imperial title away from being a true god. So even without leaving home, Mr. Fan can hear and see many things. Just some minions, not a big deal. Su Tong said disapprovingly. Oh, you are so confident. Could it be that Master Sun Long taught you some magical spell? Seeing Su Tong's confident look, Mr. Wen-I-Yuan couldn't help but curiously asked. This. After Su Tong thought about it, he simply took out a piece of yellow paper in his hand and folded it into a paper figure at will in front of Mr. Wen-I-Yuan. With the gentle flick of his fingers, the paper figures danced on his palm. I saw Mr. Wen-I-Yuan's mouth twitching a few times and looking at Su Tong expressionlessly. There was no need to hide the disgust in his eyes, and he just shouted, "That's it." Fortunately, Su Tong pointed forward with his finger, and saw the paper man flying out, leaving an afterimage in the air. The next second, the bowl-sized wooden pile in front was cut into 3 pieces and slid down neatly. Seeing this, Mr. Wen-I-Yuan put away his contemptuous eyes. This technique can kill people. The 5-word evaluation illustrates Mr. Wen-I-Yuan's recognition of Su Tong's ability. But not enough to protect yourself. The next sentence showed his attitude. Su Tong actually has some tricks up his sleeve, but it's really hard to show them in front of the old gentleman. But when he heard what the old man said, Su Tong had a flash of inspiration in his mind, "Sir, Taoist Master Sun Long gave me a book, but I still can't understand it thoroughly, so my ability to control paper is just that, otherwise can you give me some pointers?" As he said this, Su Tong took out the paper maker's book. Although the master said that you need to study this book by yourself. But the matter should be urgent. It's true that you have to hang on to your life. Mr. Wen Yuan took the book, read it carefully, and nodded, "It's not difficult, it's just. That's all." In troubled times, even if this book is full of side stories, it can still be regarded as a craft that can save your life and keep you safe. It can be seen that the old gentleman does not like the contents of the paper maker's book. In his opinion, the things recorded here are all unfashionable martial arts. There was obviously some gap between it and the high-end products such as Taoist magic that he imagined. But then I thought about it, although those high-end products are good, they may not be suitable for Ma Hongwen. Furthermore, the more authentic Taoism is, the more difficult it is to achieve early results. Now that the country is about to perish, this kind of quick-acting and easy-to-practice Jianghu magic can be effective quickly. Thinking of this, Mr. Wen Yuan motioned for Su Tong to sit down. Actually, the content in this book is easy to understand. Let me explain it to you paragraph by paragraph. Mr. Wen Yuan's talent and learning are naturally unparalleled. In addition, he has taught Ma Hongwen for so many years and has accumulated sufficient teaching experience. Therefore, when learning, Su Tong not only did not find it difficult, but instead had a sense of enjoyment like listening to a master of classical literature reciting poems to him. Even though Mr. Wen Yuan uses vernacular every time he translates, the combination of each word gives people a very comfortable feeling. It doesn't take long to translate a book. When Mr. Wen Yuan translated the entire book for Su Tong, Su Tong's understanding of the paper maker's book suddenly increased by leaps and bounds. It wasn't until it was almost done that Mr. Wen Yuan closed the book and gave it back to Su Tong. "My child, you are naughty by nature, but you are a blessed person. If you survive this disaster, you can start a new life in the future. Remember Sir's teachings." Su Tong took the book and bowed to Mr. Wen Yuan. Mr. Wen Yuan nodded, and as the sun rose and roosters crowed on the street, his figure gradually faded away in front of Su Tong. After Mr. Wen Yuan disappeared, Su Tong reread the contents of the paper maker's book before throwing it into the prop book. At this time, there was a flickering light on the paper maker's book. Su Tong took another look and found that the entry in Paper Craftsman's book had actually been upgraded. Paper maker's book. If the items inherited from the 8 miscellaneous studies cannot be affirmed by the previous owner, they cannot be obtained. Passive skill 1, flowers growing on fingers. Master all the basic skills of paper craftsmanship, making the wearer a master in origami skills. Art on your fingertips, but not enough. Active skill 1, paper control. It consumes 10 script points. After activation, you can control origami products at will, such as paper people, paper horses, paper cows, etc. The larger the target and the greater the number, the more energy is consumed. Note, please try the quantity yourself. Each use consumes 10 script points. Such American Samoa double paper figures, the cost is doubled. Cooling time, none. Active skill 2, enchantment. Spending 5 script points you can apply enchantment to paper items, which not only greatly enhances the item's resistance, toughness, and strength, but also has a 20% chance of obtaining special bonuses. The specific effect depends on the material. Toilet paper is also acceptable. Cooling time, none. Active skill 3, divine descent technique. After consuming 20 script points and part of the sacrifices, guidance money, ghost money, etc., to activate it, you can carry out a divine descending ceremony and summon the ghosts and spirits of the underworld, all kinds of kings and little ghosts, through paper figures. Note, to summon a specific god, a specific token is required. If there is no specific token, it will be randomly summoned based on the sacrifice. Duration, starting from 10 minutes, it depends on the quality of the paper man and the mood of the spirit. Cooling time, 2 hours. The above are the effects of in-depth appraisal. If you want to improve your skills, please try to complete the elite appraisal. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 408. The in-depth identification effect of the papermaker's book can upgrade almost all skills in all aspects. Not only that, a divine descending technique was also added. This couldn't help but remind him that in the first script world, in order to save his son Zhou Nan, the old man used 2 paper figures to summon the 2 big bosses Xie and Fan Bie. Of course, there must be the role of my own ghost money in this. Now after completing the in-depth appraisal, I also have such an ability, and it seems to be much more convenient to use than the old man. Follow the explanation in the papermaker's book. I only need to use specific items to summon the 2 big brothers Siakifan and Ba. What this specific item refers to is not explained. But don't forget, you have a spiritual card in your hand that can directly contact them. This spiritual card may be the opportunity that Unlitate mentioned. No, it should be said that it is part of the opportunity, because just having the spiritual cards is of no use. These 2 bosses are not masters that they can control at will. When people come out, they have to pay an appearance fee. As it happens, this is exactly what I don't have. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but feel extremely resentful. He had a mold of Ming Chao in his hand, but it had a hole in it. Master once said that in their time, no one could repair this thing. Coupled with Taoist Sun Long's words, Su Tong can be sure that if he wants to repair this money mold, he must find a carpenter at the level of a grand master. He glanced at the entry in the papermaker's book again. After in-depth appraisal of this thing, it can also be elite appraisal. I don't know if any new skills will be updated by then. But that's obviously not an easy thing. Leader, you are right, the saint is in this boy's home, but... Outside the door of Ma Mansion, a group of people stood in the corner. After several days of checking the locations, they were able to confirm that the saint they were looking for from the White Lotus sect was here. Just what? Seeing the look of his subordinate Ji Jiyu, Gu Changfeng, the leader of the White Lotus sect, couldn't help but frown. It's just, that Ma Hongwen is known as a beast. We asked around and heard from the servants in the mansion that the saint is already that beast's maid. When several elders from the White Lotus sect around heard this, their eyes widened. What does a maid do? Simply put, that is the young master woman. The status is the same as 11 Ren in Dream of Red Mansions. According to the current standard of 3 wives and 4 concubines, the master is often old and weak. When having sex with his concubines and wives, he often needs a maid to push the master from behind. When necessary, you even need to help the master caress the gun. So what this means is that she is worried that the saint has been defiled by the beast Ma Hongwen. When Gu Changfeng heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little thump in his heart. Once the saint's holiness is tarnished, the spirituality in her body will disappear. At that time, it will be useless even if they invite the saint back. Thinking of this, Gu Changfeng quickly made divinations and calculated carefully. After a moment, a smile of near miss appeared on his face. It doesn't matter, the saint is still in perfect condition. After hearing what the leader said, the elders finally breathed a sigh of relief. After waiting for 100 years, the leader of the church had to endure 3 deaths, and finally waited until the saint was born. If the saint was really abused, it would be even more uncomfortable than killing them. Then what are you waiting for? Let's just go in and grab it. A bearded elder slowly pulled out the blade, but was immediately stopped. "Don't do it." The spy who was in charge of checking the spot a few days ago firmly held down the elder's wrist and said, "This place is being watched by too many people, including Prince Gong's people, people from the Xiang family, and even people from the palace. With this sword strike, the entire capital will be in chaos. Chaos is chaos, don't worry about him, let's just kill him without leaving a trace, rush into the palace, and kill the old lady, Queen Mother Shensi." The bearded elder looked like he was willing to kill himself and pull the emperor down. But others didn't dare to let him act like this. Gu Changfeng waved his hand to signal them to quiet down, and glanced out of the corner of his eye. "Hey." When everyone heard Gu Changfeng's surprised voice, they all looked up and saw a young man walking out of the house with a smile on his face. "Headmaster, that's that little beast Ma Hongwen." Someone pointed at Su Tong, and Gu Changfeng identified it as Ma Hongwen. "Then what are you waiting for? Kill him." The bearded elder behind him was about to charge out again with his sword, but Gu Changfeng shook his head. "No need, you may not be a match for this kid." "Ah, I'm not his opponent." Big Beard seemed to have heard something incredible. He had been practicing hard for 30 years, and he was a top-notch master in the world. Looking at that little beast, he looked like he was in his early 20s at best. When he was practicing martial arts, this kid was still an egg. Everyone was also surprised. According to the information they inquired about, this young man named Ma Hongwen's main occupation every day was drinking, visiting brothels, gambling, listening to music, and finally bullying others. The only thing they had never heard of was that he was a trainee. Family son. Facing the doubtful looks of everyone, Gu Changfeng did not explain this, but just said, "But he can't live for long. The blackening of Xiantang is a sign of sudden death. Unless the gods come, no one can save him." Bah, this little bastard got a bargain. The bearded man had an angry look on his face, and seemed to think it was a pity that such a scumbag did not die under his sword. "Headmaster, since this kid has left, those informants will definitely follow him. How about we kidnap the saint girl now?" Seeing that all the spies around him were leaving with Ma Hongwen, someone suggested to Gu Changfeng. "No, wait a minute, you go buy some yellow-scented candles." Gu Changfeng looked at the sky above the Ma family's house, and could clearly see a majestic figure hanging high above the house. In fact, Gu Changfeng was also surprised. He didn't expect that there would be a house god in the Ma family, and he was also a very powerful house god. No wonder Ma Chi is so lucky. There is a god in his family and he has many descendants. After Gu Changfeng finished speaking, he couldn't help but think of Ma Hongwen who had just passed by, and immediately sneered, "So what if there is a house god, that kid is bound to die, and a small house god cannot save him." Tai Fung House, this restaurant opened not long ago and does not have the golden signboard of a century-old restaurant. In this place in the capital, if you open a restaurant and it doesn't have the sign of a century-old restaurant, you wouldn't dare call yourself a big restaurant. If there is no mention of Emperor Qian's imperial treasure on the plaque, it will not be authentic enough. However, Taifeng building has been relatively high profile since it opened. It is located on Maishi Street, Yilan. The appearance is inconspicuous, but the inside is extremely spacious, with more than 100 rooms and more than 60 tables. It was the largest in Nanjing at that time. The dishes also feature Shandong cuisine, such as braised mullet egg soup, hibiscus and white fungus soup, hot and sour shredded chicken soup, 6 meatballs, yellow river carp, etc. Large portion and delicious. The only downside is that the price is a little on the high side. But the decoration is so exquisite and the venue is so large that many wealthy families often choose to hold banquets in Tai Fung House. Su Tong came to the banquet early today. We booked the most luxurious and largest private room and ordered a large table of wine and food. Huo Wuji and others also came as invited. Because Li 11 hadn't come yet, the four of them sat casually at the table and started chatting. The soundproofing effect of the room was very poor. While the four of them were casually chatting for a few words, they heard a group of people next door yelling happily. First he scolded the landlords, then the county magistrates, and finally the scolding became so intense that he even scolded the emperor. It was also quite noisy around here, and not many people actually heard it. Otherwise, someone who was more thoughtful would have gone out and reported it. Many people from the world have come to Beijing recently. Su Tong couldn't help but smile as he listened to the words in the room. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but there have been more strangers coming to Beijing recently. Qian Shao laughed, because Li 11 had told him that they did this secretly and were not allowed to spread the word, not even Brother Ma could tell, so Qian Shao did not dare to tell Su Tong that this was all news released by Know How. From the accent, it sounds like over there in Tianjin. Ever since the imperial court opened martial arts schools and allocated a sum of money to support martial arts every year, there are all kinds of boxing there. There are more martial arts schools than in the capital. I heard recently that there are more martial arts schools. I have visited several martial arts schools. Tianjin is a place where folk martial arts is very popular, and major boxing gyms have opened here to recruit disciples. Over time, it gives people the feeling that heroes from all over the world want to open a martial arts gym in Tianjin. If you can open a martial arts gym in Tianjin, the value of it will be different. According to Tianjin's rules, if you want to open a martial arts gym, you must first compete in a martial arts gym. You can't do it yourself yet. You need an apprentice to compete in a martial arts gym. As long as you win 10 martial arts gyms in a row, you can open a martial arts gym in Tianjin. However, the apprentice who plays the gym will be kicked out of Tianjin. Disciples who were kicked out often came to the capital to work in the capital or join the army. The master hopes that they can earn face by playing in the gym, so he teaches them real kung fu. If they join the army or travel around, they will not be afraid of starving to death. Although Bai Shitong meant this with a bit of ridicule, the general idea was that this kind of thing is not uncommon. As long as Tianjin catches up with the trend of playing gymnastics, it won't take long for a large number of practitioners to come to Beijing. Su Tong looked like he suddenly understood. Don't tell me, I have never been to Tianjin. It is said that there are a lot of delicious food in that place and the folk customs are also open. I will go there to see anything in this life, no matter what. If you don't work, just sit in a street tea house, drink a cup of tea, and listen to cross-talk is also a kind of enjoyment. Bai Shitong burst out laughing when he heard this. Hey, Brother Ma, don't tell me. If you really come to Tianjin, you don't have to go to a cross-talk specifically. You can just find a small restaurant and listen to the locals talk about the mountains. It's more fun than cross-talk. The four of them burst out laughing and laughing. The smile on Su Tong's face gradually faded. He glanced sideways at the door and said, "You have been standing outside the door for almost half an hour. If you don't come in, the food will be cold." As soon as the words fell, a sigh slowly came from outside the door. A hand gently opened the door, revealing Li 11's face. However, in addition to Li 11, two strangers walked in with Li 11. Li 11 walked in the door, not daring to look at Su Tong. She just lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Brother Ma, Prince Gong, please come for a moment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 409. Prince Gong. Su Tong was stunned for a moment and looked at the two people behind Li 11. The man on the left is tall and majestic, with a pockmarked face, while the man on the right is thin and thin, with two slender beards on his face. As soon as the two entered the door, they intentionally or unintentionally blocked the exit of the room. Seeing this, Su Tong's expression immediately turned cold. "Brother Li, what are you doing?" Qian Shao looked at Li 11 in surprise. "Haha, Can't you tell? Su Tong stared at Li 11 coldly. Xiao Li, everyone these days must be prepared to be betrayed. I don't blame you, but Brother Ma just wants to ask you, how much did you sell Brother Ma for? As soon as these words came out, Huo Wuji became angry instantly. He slapped the table and glared at Li 11 with two copper bell-sized eyes. You sold Brother Ma. Huo Wuji's anger caught everyone off guard, or in other words, Su Tong was also a little surprised by this. But the one who was most surprised was Li 11. In fact, on the way here, Li 11 thought about whether doing this would offend Huo Wuji and the others. But Li 11 felt that it was no exaggeration to say that the relationship between him and the three of them over the years was one of sharing will and woe. They should understand their choices and even be on their side. But what Li 11 never expected was that Huo Wuji suddenly broke out. The eyes glaring at Li 11 were not only angry, but also had a look that felt strange to Li 11. This kind of unfamiliarity made Li 11 panic and subconsciously looked at Know-It-All and Qian Xiao. But what he never expected in his dreams was that Bai Shitong and Qinju both turned their heads at the same time. You. He opened his mouth with difficulty, but when it came to his lips, he didn't know what to say. We are good brothers. Don't forget, I brought you to the capital. The four of us are good brothers sworn to Jinlan. He is just an outsider. We are brothers. However, he couldn't say these words, and Huo Wuji's violent temper got the better of him. He stepped forward and grabbed Li 11's collar. You're fooled by lard. During this time, Brother Ma has been good to us. Let's eat. I've never run out of money for drinks. How could you do this? Li 11 was stunned for a moment, and the anger in his heart suddenly exploded, and he pushed Huo Wuji away. Yes, there is no shortage of food, drink, and money. What does this have to do with me? You are all enjoying it. I am still serving people in the palace. After saying that, he looked at Su Tong who was sitting next to him, and the anger in his eyes was mostly gone. He had never used it, but he had also taken it. At least Su Tong had never been stingy when giving him banknotes. But so what? Brother Ma, when you were in a coma, I stole ginseng from the Imperial Hospital to make medicine for you. We don't owe anything to each other. Prince Gong wants to see you. What can I, a little eunuch, do? For my sake, just follow me obediently. I promise that Prince Gong will never harm you. Who dares? Huo Wuji was annoyed and stood in front of Su Tong with wide eyes. Qian Shu and Bai Shi Tong looked at each other and seemed to be embarrassed. But in the end, he still sided with Huo Wuji. Jianghu people, righteousness comes first. He. The short man with a mustache standing behind Li 11 looked at Huo Wuji's angry expression, pushed Li 11 away from the troublesome guy, took a step forward, and stood face to face in front of Huo Wuji. Although he was not as tall as Huo Wuji, he raised his head and showed a provocative look. At the same time, his skin was still covered with black spots, and his aura was changing at an extremely fast speed. The unique aura of the half-step master filled the air, and the surroundings instantly became quiet. Even the people drinking in the box next door were silent. Huo Wuji's pupils tightened, and his face instantly turned pale. Half-step, cough cough cough, cough cough, Grandmaster, cough cough. Bai Shitong's face turned red. Because he was so excited, his chest began to hurt again, and he couldn't help but cough violently. Seeing this, Qinju knew that Bai Shitong's illness had broken out, and hurriedly handed him a glass of water, but Bai Shitong's illness seemed not to be suppressed by a glass of water. At the same time, the tall man on the side silently raised his fists and stared indifferently at the two people Qinju and Bai Shitong beside him. His dull eyes made the two of them feel like they were being stared at by wild beasts. Every pore in his body tightened involuntarily. Another master. This time, most of the three people's anger was wiped out. A half-step master, a top expert, just trying to kill them is nothing more than a dream. Enough. A cold snort interrupted the rising murderous intent. Su Tong stood up and patted Huo Wuji on the shoulder. Don't do stupid things, you can't beat them. Huo Wuji looked at Su Tong, feeling a little guilty in his eyes. Actually, I'm surprised that you can do this. Su Tong pressed Huo Wuji down, raised his glass, looked at Huo Wuji, then at Bai Shitong, and finally at Jian Shu. I was surprised. I didn't expect to say goodbye in such a way. It was very different from what I thought. It also gave me some inspiration. Maybe sometimes, people's hearts are fickle, and human nature is not that bad. Li 11 on the side lowered his head guiltily after hearing this. Although Huo Wuji and others didn't know what Brother Ma meant, they still raised the wine glasses on the table. Time flies, I hope you will never forget your original intention and keep working hard. Su Tong drank the wine in one gulp. Dry. Huo Wuji gritted his teeth, roared, and finished the drink. The three of them finished their drinks. Su Tong raised his hand, glanced at the pale Li 11 next to him, patted his arm with relief, and placed a bottle of fire knife on the table. This is a gift banquet prepared for you, don't waste it. Li 11 was stunned for a moment, but before he could say anything, Su Tong had already walked away from him. Lead the way. Please. The two men, tall and short, lost their aura, opened the door and asked Su Tong to come downstairs. As for Li 11, neither of them looked at him. Brother Ma is gone. The atmosphere in the room also dropped to freezing point. Li 11 looked at Huo Wuji and the other three, and saw the three of them looking at him expressionlessly, as if there was a walnut stuffed in his throat. It was stuck in his throat and made him unable to breathe. Finally Huo Wuji picked up the bottle of fire-burning knife and filled the wine glass. Then he picked up the wine glass. Brother Ma heard that you were leaving the capital, so he specially called us, booked this banquet, and asked us to support you on your journey together. Brother, the journey is long, so go ahead and cherish it. Seeing this, Bai Shitong silently picked up the wine glass. Bon voyage. These four simple words contain no unnecessary emotion, and are more like describing something that has nothing to do with me. Seeing this, Kinju wanted to persuade him. After all, we have been in a relationship for so many years. But seeing Huo Wuji and Bai Shitong's firm attitudes, they sighed helplessly. He looked at Li 11 accusingly. He knew that Huo Wuji had a temper just like Lai Huo and couldn't be persuaded to come back. If Li 11 had opened up about this matter and made it clear from the beginning, they would never have been on Brother Ma's side after their relationship had been here for many years. But the problem is, Li 11 didn't tell them anything. This made them inexplicably become villains along with him. Thinking about it, one moment, they were sitting and drinking with Brother Ma with sincerity and chatting happily. The next second, they became Li 11's accomplices. This strong contrast made them feel that it was not Brother Ma who was being sold, but them. It would be strange if Huo Wuji didn't fall out. Now that the situation has reached this point, what else can be said? Senju could only pick up the wine glass without saying a word. Looking at the wine glass held in front of him, Li 11 only had pain on his face. He raised the wine glass with a dull expression, but before he could recover, he looked up. Boom! With a crisp sound, Huo Wuji dropped the finished wine to the ground, shattering it into pieces. Bang! Bang! Immediately after the sound of two cups being smashed, Li Zikai suddenly came back to his senses. The only response to him was two words of coldness. Farewell. After the words fell, Huo Wuji opened the door and walked out. Bai Shitong covered his chest, and with the support of Jian Shu, he lowered his head and followed closely. In the empty room, only Li 11 was left holding the wine glass in his hand blankly. After a moment, the wind blowing from the window made him suddenly come to his senses and look at the empty banquet table. Li 11 felt equally empty in his heart, and he seemed to be able to see in a trance that if he had not betrayed Brother Ma, the five of them would be sitting here drinking and talking happily at this moment, and they would be indescribably happy. But suddenly, Li 11 raised his head, with a cold light in his eyes. He remembered the scene in Prince Gong's mansion. I remembered Prince Gong's condescending and contemptuous eyes. I remembered the horror of the two top masters, tall and short. I'm right, I just want to live. After that, he picked up the glass of wine in his hand and drank it in one gulp. The hot drink poured down your throat like a knife, making you want to spit it out. But Li 11 swallowed it hard, feeling the pain of this wild horse galloping in his chest, as if it was about to burn all his internal organs. As if that wasn't enough, he grabbed the wine bottle on the table and took a swig. In an instant, Li 11's entire face turned red, and both of his eyes were bloodshot. If the first bite was like a knife, then the second bite was like fire, igniting his whole body. Burn it, burn it, burn all the unhappiness in my heart. It seemed that only this burning sensation of self-punishment could allow him to take a breath. Standing outside the window, watching the busy traffic on the street, I finally couldn't suppress the anger in my heart. God, why did you treat me like this? Why? I hummed your ancestors. As he spoke, he threw the wine bottle in his hand hard. The wine bottle drew an arc in the air, and at the moment it was about to hit the ground, it was gently and steadily picked up by a hand, as if this hand had already predicted that a bottle of wine would fall from the sky. With his palm retracted, he saw a drunkard holding an iron sword, looking at the bottle of wine in his hand with glowing eyes, and squinting at Li 11 at the window. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Want to have a good day? You deserve it too. After saying that, he put the wine bottle to his mouth and took a sip. His hazy eyes gradually became sharper. If you want to have sex, I have to do it first. Sorry about that, the chapter number was wrong in the first 66 chapters, the scumbag princess. Every time I uploaded a chapter, I looked at the chapter number of the previous chapter, but I didn't pay attention to the mistake. The latter part is all wrong, but I don't have the permission to modify it. I'll ask the editor on Monday. Good night. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 410. Boss, isn't it too cruel for us to do this? When I see that boy Li 11 crying, he looks like my roommate who was cheated on in college. Compared to Li 11's heartbreak, Su Tong sat comfortably in the carriage prepared by Prince Gong for him. There was also a fruit plate and snacks in it. He happened to be short of food, so he could just take care of the two of them. Hearing Gao Zhou's teasing, Su Tong ate the snack in his mouth and said with a smile, I think you are clearly making friends out of thin air. Why, have you found empathy? Oh, I have a wife. If you say this, be careful that I sue you for slander. Gao Zhou raised the car curtain and stuck his head into protest. After saying that, Gao Zhou laughed again. But looking at that boy Li 11 crying, I feel really happy. This old thief has done many evil things, and there is no evil thing that is not related to him. Gao Zhou felt no guilt about Li 11's grief. Think about how Li 11 messed with them in the last script world. Not only did he build a well of death in the ghost market, but he also used Chi Menwujian to deal with them on their way home. In the end, Su Tong almost died. This old thief only wanted to live for himself, even if he knew that breaking through the yin and yang dao and the real world would cause the entire world to be rampant with demons. It would be a pity not to kill this kind of person. In fact, in the script designed by Su Tong, if Li 11 suddenly betrayed him, Huo Wuji and the others would side with Li 11. Then the group of people took themselves to see Prince Gong. According to this process, none of the four of them would survive. But what he didn't expect was that Huo Wuji and the others would actually fall out with Li 11. This was something I didn't expect. Watching the drama of brotherly antagonism unfolding in front of the dinner table, while I was enjoying myself, I also had to admit that the changes in people's hearts were too subtle. No one is bad and pure, and no one is pure and flawless. Even if he knew clearly that Bai Shitong would be the future owner of Fenglai Tower, he also knew that in the future, Qinju, the bastard, might be the culprit who directly plotted against the master. Although he could kill them ruthlessly, doing so would make him feel inexplicably against his will. Such a sense of disobedience made him very uncomfortable, because he knew in his heart that at this moment, Huowiji and the others were not rotten to the core. More importantly, even if they are like the future in the script world, the future ending will definitely not change. The master will still use legitimate means to drag these rotten old guys into hell. The carriage moved slowly along the streets in the city. But there is no peace visible to the naked eye on the way. The figure wearing a long and loose gown quickly moved through the crowd. When the figure of another person is coming towards you. Under the dim cuffs, a pitch-black dagger poked out from the cuffs, stabbing forward silently. Boom. There was a crisp and brief sound of metal friction, which could even be completely ignored in the crowd. However, after the two figures each took a few steps, one of them would always fall to the ground. There were too many eyes staring at Su Tong. In order to hide the rumors, Prince Gong spent almost all his family resources. Hundreds of well-trained killers followed closely around the convoy, quickly clearing out the surrounding hidden sentries. People fell down on the street from time to time, but often before pedestrians noticed, they were picked up on the left and right and quickly dragged into the dark alley. The whole process was clean and fast, and not even a single sound was made. But the killing is going on all the time. These people were indeed the trump cards in Prince Gong's hand. More than 10 spies were quickly eliminated. There may be some that slip through the cracks, but that's okay. For this operation, Prince Gong prepared many backup methods. After all, after so many years of operation, he did not only have one card like the killer. The palace gate has long been closed, but a spy holding a token is staggering towards the palace gate. The token in the spy's hand is his unimpeded pass. With this token, even if he wanted to break into the harem, no one would stop him, because it was the token of the Empress Dowager Cixin. But suddenly, a black light flashed in the air, and an arrow pierced the air, hitting the spy's throat and killing him on the spot. A man in armor walked out with a bow and arrow. Listen, anyone who breaks into the palace tonight will be killed. After speaking, he glanced at the token in the spy's hand, picked it up and sneered, I saw it was a fake. How dare you fish in troubled waters, so I threw the token into the moat. Quick! Quick! Quick, take me to see the master. The same scene appeared in front of the Xiang family gate at this moment. The spy who was lucky enough to escape rushed into the door and was about to go inside. Something serious has happened. Please wake me up quickly. What's the big deal? What's all the fuss about? I'm just taking a rest now. Can you tell me anything? The person who spoke was a steward of the Xiang family. The Xiang family does not have just one butler. Generally speaking, a wealthy family like the Xiang family often needs 6 or 7 butlers. Because Xiang Gongbao married more concubines, each concubine was assigned a housekeeper to take care of his daily life, so the Xiang family had a total of 16 housekeepers. The person in front of me is one of them. When the spy who came to report the news saw this, he frowned and was about to rush in. Instead, he was stopped by the butler. Just when the spy was about to scold him, suddenly a shiny sharp knife appeared in the butler's hand and he thrust it into the spy's chest. Followed by the surrounding servants, each one stabbed the guy with a knife, stabbing this guy into a hornet's nest before giving up. Looking at the body lying on the ground, the housekeeper waved his hand and the servants immediately moved the body away. Wow, wow, wow. 2 basins of water were sprinkled on the stone steps, and several people took brooms and brushes to quickly clean up the blood stains on the ground. Similar things happened not only in the palace and the Xiang family, but also in the families of several ministers. Prince Gong has obviously been preparing for this day for a long time. However, what Prince Gong may have never dreamed of is that there is a saying that people's calculations are not as good as God's calculations. The carriage had not yet had time to enter Prince Gong's mansion. Suddenly, a sharp siren sounded in the sky, followed by a huge firework exploding in mid-air. Huh! Su Tong lifted the curtain and looked outside, only to see fireworks exploding in the air one after another, and a red Kongming lantern floating in the air. It's not the new year yet, why are there fireworks? Wang Zheng sat on the carriage and looked at the fireworks exploding above his head. He couldn't help but scratch his head and said, "It's so beautiful. I haven't seen fireworks in a long time." As soon as he finished speaking, the killers scattered around the carriage quickly moved closer. He pulled the carriage and gave the horse a hard slap on the butt. Accompanied by the cry of the horse, the speed of the carriage suddenly accelerated. Su Tong pulled Wang Zheng back into the car and looked at the fireworks outside. He frowned and said, "Something's wrong. This should be a signal from the spies. The capital is going to be in chaos." He looked in the direction of the signal with suspicion in his eyes. That was his home. But he was clearly not at home, so why was there trouble there? It's a time of doubt. The three of them received a prompt from the prop book at the same time. Ding! Main Mission 3, Participants in History. Mission Description: a long-planned rebellion is about to begin, which will usher in the end of the Great Unification. Players must participate in this action and survive until the dust settles. Mission Goal: survive. Mission Penalty: very high. Note: if you are willing to hide in a corner, it may also be a wise choice. Ding! Side Mission 4, Jianghu Predators. Mission Description: troubled times are about to arise, and the entire world will be shaken up. A large number of strangers in the world have received the news in advance and will break into the Forbidden City along with this operation. Mission Goal: kill at least 3 strangers. Note: the water in the rivers and lakes is very deep. There are small miscellaneous fish that are not worth mentioning, and there are also giant crocodiles in the deep sea. Be careful, if you choose the wrong object, your game journey may end. Ding! Side Mission 5, Treasure Hunt. Mission Description: a large number of people in the world want to fish in troubled waters. After today, many rare treasures are destined to be lost among the people. Mission Goal: obtain treasures with a total value of more than 1000 script points. Note: the time to test your eyesight has come. This is a rare opportunity. Go and plunder it, but keep your eyes open. After all, script points are far more precious than antiques worth millions. The constant sound of prompts made the three of them startled. Sure enough, as Su Tong had speculated before, it was a task for 4 people after all, and the difficulty of the task itself was not particularly high. It's just that the degree of everyone's participation is bound to be linked to the risk. If you want to get through safely and earn a basic script point to live your life, you can sneak into the palace, find a corner to hide, smoke a cigarette, and sleep comfortably. It can be said that this main mission is the easiest among all the script worlds he has experienced. But really? Su Tong looked at the props book, looking at every word of the mission on it, and felt that there seemed to be a sense of conspiracy in it. But at this moment, the external conditions obviously did not allow him to think too much. The sound of horse hooves in the distance clearly indicated that pursuers were coming. "Let me do it." Hearing the movement outside, Wang Zheng stood up slowly and lifted the curtains of the car. As soon as he stuck his head out, a crossbow arrow was shot towards him. Wang Zheng reached out and grabbed the crossbow arrow in his hand, and threw it behind him. The arrow made a rapid tearing sound in the air, and in the next second it shot through the chest of a man in black holding a crossbow. "You go first, I'll cover you." Wang Zheng jumped off the carriage, waved his fists and rushed towards the group of men in black behind him. "This guy is so fierce." Gao Zhou smashed his mouth, and the two of them entered Prince Gong's mansion at the same time. Prince Gong also specially sent two masters to test them. It was also at that time that Gao Zhou discovered that although Wang Zhen was not a half-step master, his real combat ability was ridiculously strong. To be fair, if the two of them were to fight and he had used all his trump cards, the chance of killing Wang Zhen would only be 60%, while the chance of the other party killing him would definitely be higher than lower. This guy must be included in the team, let's. When Gao Zhou said that, he turned back to look at Su Tong, his pupils suddenly tightened and he said in surprise, "What's wrong with you?" Su Tong, who was sitting in the carriage, could be seen frowning tightly together. A small black handprint on his shoulder was emitting hot green smoke. In a daze, Su Tong's eyes reflected the appearance of the eldest princess. Even though there was no sound, he knew that this bitch was warning him to enter the palace as soon as possible. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 411. These idiots. Quick, wake up all the private troops, quick. In Prince Gong's palace, Prince Gong's expression suddenly changed when he saw the fireworks signal outside. He cursed these stupid pigs in his heart. He had spent so much time arranging the arrangements and yet they were exposed. The housekeeper hurried over at this time. "Your Majesty, a group of people who didn't know where they came from suddenly rushed into Ma's house and set it on fire." This only alerted the spies. What the steward means is that this is not our own problem, it is someone else's fault. Yes, who would have thought that someone would suddenly do something like this at this time? But it's meaningless to say anything now. Now everyone knows that if someone touches the Ma family, the whole capital will be in riots. Prince Gong's original plan was to take action tomorrow morning when the city gates changed defenses, because when the city defenses changed, the palace gates of the harem would also be opened. But now plans have to be brought forward. He waved his hand and did not let the butler continue talking. It was pointless to pursue these matters now. He must act as soon as possible without any delay. Now I just hope that Ma Hongwen can be captured smoothly. Head, what's wrong? Seeing Su Tong's ugly face, Gao Zhou also restrained his expression and looked at him seriously. It's okay, everything is as planned. Let's go see Prince Gong. Su Tong waved his hand and glanced sideways in the direction of the Forbidden City. A cold snort came from his nose. By the time the carriage arrived at Prince Gong's mansion, soldiers were already standing in darkness outside the prince's mansion. These soldiers were not only well equipped, but each of them had an unruly murderous look in their eyes. At first glance, he is an elite soldier among elite soldiers. Just by looking at their heads, you can tell that they are all strong and strong. In comparison, the soldiers trained by March were far behind. No matter in terms of equipment or physical fitness, they are not at the same level at all. At a glance, there were at least 5,000 such soldiers, and both streets were occupied. With such an army of 1 against 10, it is no wonder that Prince Gong had the confidence to rebel. But where did these armies come from? Judging from the equipment, these soldiers obviously cannot be from any barracks. Because today's finances simply cannot support such an army. The mighty Datong dynasty couldn't afford 5,000 elite soldiers. It seems exaggerated, but the truth is even more exaggerated. Ma Qi was given an additional title by the Empress Dowager Shenxi, and the army was expanded to 3 battalions. Only later did I realize that, good guy, there were 3 garbage barracks where the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled were all alive. Not to mention the equipment, even the weapons are almost rotten. Some veterans have not even seen a salary for 5 or 6 years. They come here just to make a living, and even their military uniforms are fully patched. Only then did he realize that Datong dynasty was rotten to the bone. The figures reported by the Ministry of War every year do not match up here at all, and the silver tael allocated every year has never been distributed at all. If it weren't for Su Tong's cheap father-in-law who generously contributed hundreds of thousands of silver, Ma Chi wouldn't even be able to provide food and salary to the new soldiers, let alone training them. Over the years, Prince Gong may have been docile on the surface, but his cliques behind his back have become deeply ingrained. The amount of money flowing out of Prince Gong every year is already difficult to count. Where did this money come from? On the face of it, Prince Gong's mansion has thousands of acres of fertile land, 20 farms, 3 rice farms, pawn shops, silks, porcelain and other industries in the capital. Just these are already extremely wealthy countries. But is that all? Just look at the prosperity of the foreigner district. There are jade houses, gambling houses, opium dens, and even human traffickers' businesses. In any low-life and profitable business, the shadow of the big boss behind it is indispensable. As the saying goes, I am the white one, and I am the black one. The money and food spent on these elite soldiers every year are all made of real money. It seemed that Prince Gong had known for sure that this day would come early in the morning. When Su Tong sat on the carriage and saw such a dark army of elite soldiers, he instantly broke into a cold sweat for his father. Prince Gong, who was standing outside the gate, finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Ma Hongwen coming out of the carriage. It's showtime. Gao Zhou's face was serious as he roughly pulled Su Tong out of the car and pushed him in front of Prince Gong. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Prince Gong looked askance at the charming Mr. Ma. His pale face was still pretending to be calm, but his eyes seemed to be filled with fear. Just like a frightened little hedgehog, he wanted to shrink into a ball and try his best to stand up his thorns to make himself look powerful. If the assassin named Tang Fen was still alive, after seeing this scene, he would definitely understand what the art of performance is. Every look and every detail of his movements is so perfect that you can't find a single thorn in it. Of course, if the dead Xiao Litzi could see this scene, he would be shocked to find out, isn't this him? Prince Gong was very satisfied with Ma Hongwen's appearance. Don't worry, be obedient and I won't kill you. Yes, I am obedient, I am obedient. Su Tong swallowed and nodded repeatedly. Where's your brother? At this time, Prince Gong saw that only Gao Zhou had returned, and he couldn't help but frown and asked. When he came back, he ran into trouble and he stayed behind to break up the queen. Gao Zhou responded expressionlessly. Prince Gong nodded. These two men had just entered the palace, and he did not trust the two brothers. He even doubted whether they were spies sent by the Xiang family. But after checking, I found out that the tall guy was actually the bastard who escaped from his black boxing ring before. Although he was very annoyed, he finally endured it. After all, he needed talents now. Seeing that the two brothers had brought Ma Hongwen back, he felt relieved about their opinions. He pushed Su Tong to Gao Zhou and told him to keep an eye on the boy. Without further delay, follow me into the palace, overthrow the tyranny of Mercy Saint, and bring peace to the world. Now that the matter has been exposed, the palace must not be allowed time to prepare. Prince Gong pulled out the sword from his waist and jumped on his horse. Kill! Kill! The soldiers raised their swords and followed Prince Gong into the palace. The gate of the Forbidden City has been opened by the soldiers bribed by Prince Gong. These rebels joined Prince Jing Gong's team and marched straight into the palace. Some of the guards who resisted were vulnerable to the group of brave generals under Prince Gong. Some simply knelt on the ground and surrendered. Su Tong and Gao Zhou followed behind in a carriage, looking at the palace gate getting closer and closer. Su Tong opened the window and looked up above his head. That strong uneasiness swept through my heart again. In the palace, the old phoenix was being tightly wrapped around the neck by a dragon. Perhaps the injury from the last time had not healed yet. This time, the old phoenix had almost no power to resist when facing the dragon. Fortunately, The fierce horse on the side was trampling on the dragon, trying to drive it away. It seemed like a fight between dragon and phoenix, but Su Tong saw something unusual. Dark clouds were rolling in the night sky, but a full moon appeared in the sky, like an eye silently watching the battle. From time to time, there is an indescribable aura surging in the dark clouds, which gives people an extremely depressing feeling, as if a real behemoth is hiding in it, ready to go. A cool breeze blew, and the wind was mixed with the roar of tigers, which added a bit of danger to the various strange phenomena in front of us. Bang 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 bang. March's royal guards were finally mobilized, and they stood condescendingly on the city defense and began to shoot at the soldiers below with crossbows and steam guns. It is obviously not an easy task to break into the harem. It is just a palace door with a willow inlaid in front of it. Without professional engineering tools, trying to break it open is nothing more than a dream. But Prince Gong had been planning for this day for a long time and had already prepared for the worst. Pa pa pa. Two grooms stood in front of the carriage, cracking their whips as hard as they could, driving the 6 horses to pull the cannon forward. The horses' eyes were red, and white mist with blood mist was constantly sprayed from their mouths and noses. Apparently they have been fed some kind of potion to enhance their power. Even so, the carriage's moving speed is only slightly faster than a normal person walking. The reason for this is precisely because this wide carriage is pulling a huge thing. The straight and huge barrel emits a ferocious cold light in the night. Different from ordinary artillery, this cannon is almost as big as an elephant, and the muzzle alone is as thick as the mouth of a bull. A huge boiler was installed at the back to continuously add pressure to the cannon. Foreign steam cannon. Su Tong watched intently. This space was completely different from the real history. Westerners' research on gunpowder did not reach the extreme of thermal weapons. Instead, they were more interested in developing steam energy. It may seem like an outdated energy source, but foreigners have used steam to design steam battleships, steam chariots, and even steam airships. Finally, there is the steam cannon. Such a simple cannon directly blasted open the door that had been closed to the country for 200 years. With the muzzle of the cannon, it slowly aimed at the door ahead. Prince Gong waved his long sword. Fire! Boom! Along with the terrifying water vapor, the fumaroles on both sides of the cannon burst out, forming a huge searing wave, and the whole world seemed to be covered in white mist. Su Tong even smelled the smell of steamed meat filling the air. When the white mist dissipated, I saw several corpses lying on the ground around the cannon. These people were so unlucky that they stood in front of the cannon's vent. As a result, he was instantly sprayed with high-heat water vapor, and was steamed in an instant. It can only be said that these people are too unlucky. This cannon was originally dismantled from a foreign warship. It turns out that the 2 air outlets are connected to the battleship's energy recovery pipeline. It is completely temporary, and its safety cannot be guaranteed. But even so, the power of the cannon was undoubtedly terrifying, and the vermilion door was smashed into pieces. The Imperial troops who were standing behind the door also suffered heavy casualties. Such terrifying power made the Forbidden Army feel cold in their hearts. Fight in. Prince Gong took the lead and charged with his horse. At this time, Su Tong noticed that there was a strange aura surging around Prince Gong's body. His fate seemed to become stronger at this moment. Some bullets shot at him were pushed away by an unknown force. At this moment, he seemed to be the protagonist blessed by destiny, immune to all evil and invulnerable to sword damage. Is this what destiny is for? Su Tong remembered that in the last script, the black tiger came behind Li 11, and his mountain buckle could not shake a hair on his body. It was not until the master took action, and then the power of destiny suppressed the black tiger and killed Li 11. Just when he was pondering the wonder of fate, his heart suddenly tightened. He looked sideways and saw an old eunuch on the wall looking towards him. The two looked at each other for a moment. Su Tong's pupils tightened and he reached out to grab him. Zhu Gaozhou's collar jumped out of the car. Run. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 412. Gao Zhou realized it later. Before his toes even touched the ground, he suddenly opened his bone wings behind him and swept his wings backwards. The next second, Gao Zhou noticed the smell of blood in the air. Dots of blood cracked from his shoulders, and blood flowers burst out in the air. Gao Zhou didn't have time to feel the pain, but his body rolled to the ground uncontrollably with Su Tong. After rolling awkwardly on the solid ground, he stabilized his feet. When he raised his head, the muscles on his face couldn't help but twitched a few times. The carriage they were riding in was torn apart with a loud explosion. Even the horse pulling the carriage was not spared and was cut into more than 10 pieces in an instant. Hiss, this old thing. Gao Zhou looked into the distance and found that the old eunuch was looking this way again. His face suddenly changed, and he followed Su Tong and hid in the crowd. What is that? Grand Master? Why do I think this guy is scarier than the Grand Master? Don't be afraid, this old eunuch is just a great master, but he is still one step away from having flowers on his head. Su Tong looked around and saw that the old eunuch had a thick evil aura coming from his body. This evil aura gathered above his head and formed a pool full of water smoke. But there is no lotus in it. Therefore, he concluded that this old eunuch was far from as unpredictable as Taoist Sun Long. If we really want to classify them, it should be said that the old eunuch's strength is almost at the peak of the Grand Master, and is on par with Master Shuigui. That's also a great master. Why do you say it so easily? Gao Zhou said and looked back. As a result, he saw that the old eunuch who had been standing on the top of the city had disappeared. Gone. Behind you. The gloomy blue and grey palace robes flashed with more than a dozen after images in the night sky, and the arms were spread out like a vulture piercing the sky. Mr. Ma, our family invites you to come to Sining Palace on the orders of the Empress Dowager. Your father Ma Chi is waiting for you. The old eunuch's voice was thin and stern, making people feel like they were having a chill in their hearts. Believe me, you old ghost. Su Tongke didn't believe what the old eunuch said, so he pulled Gao Zhou and hid in the crowd. The Empress Dowager Cixin didn't have any good intentions. Others wanted to catch her and threaten Ma Chi, but the Empress Dowager Cixin was determined to kill her, which would eliminate Ma Chi's worries. As long as he dies here, Prince Gong can't use his body to blackmail Ma Chi. Mr. Ma, what are your intentions in hiding our family from the rebel army like this? Is it possible that you really want to join these rebels and rebel? The old eunuch was unhurried and unhurried. He was wearing a purple-red coat and his figure was like a ghost as he shuttled between the gaps in the chaos. None of the soldiers around him noticed that an old eunuch had just walked past beside him. Between reality and reality, when used to this extent, it is already a nearly invincible existence in the human world. This way. Su Tong noticed that the sound was getting closer, but his face was not panic at all. He pulled Gao Zhou and ran to the other side. The direction Su Tong pulled Gao Zhou towards was exactly where Prince Gong was. At this moment, Prince Gong was ready to kill. The long sword in his hand exuded a gleaming light, and the sword's edge was unstoppable. Although he had not practiced martial arts for a long time, Prince Gong had an indescribable feeling at this moment, as if he had returned to the time when he was young, riding a horse and whipping a whip in high spirits. Prince Gong couldn't help but frown when he saw Gao Zhou bringing Ma Hongwen forward with a look of embarrassment. But before he could ask Gao Zhou why he brought Ma Hongwen here, Gao Zhou had already said, "My lord, something is wrong. That old lady Ci Sheng sent people to rob people. I can't stand it anymore. Waste." Prince Gong cursed secretly, then raised his head and saw that he was face to face with the old eunuch. "Hey! It's you, Li Jingxi." The old eunuch was stunned for a moment and raised his head numbly. Ordinary people would not be able to see him, and it would be difficult to even detect his traces, but at this moment, Prince Gong's dragon is making waves in the sea, and his destiny can be said to have reached its peak. With the blessing of destiny, he can be spotted at a glance. The existence of the old eunuch. Seeing this, the old eunuch could only salute Prince Gong respectfully. Greetings to Prince Gong. Prince Gong took a look at the old eunuch. In the past, the famous person beside the Empress Dowager, who was never far away from her, now appeared here. But Prince Gong soon realized that something was wrong. The surrounding soldiers passed by, but no one noticed him. He stood there as if he were an invisible stone, making people unconsciously move around him. Could it be, you too? It was difficult for Prince Gong to say the word Grand Master because he still didn't believe that an old eunuch who could not recruit a Grand Master even if he was willing to spend 1,000,000 taels of silver could achieve such an achievement. Thinking of this, Prince Gong's heart suddenly became enlightened. No wonder that old lady Ci Sheng has been able to keep her composure. It turns out that she has such a top master beside her at all times. Your Majesty, there is no limit to the sea of suffering, and once you turn around, you will be able to recover. The Queen Mother still hopes that you can withdraw your troops. After all, we are a family. Why do we need to do such a thing that makes our relatives happy and our enemies happy? The old eunuch lowered his voice and said with a serious tone. Hearing this, Prince Gong couldn't help but sneer. What a joke, a woman who has never even entered the Chinese gate is worthy of saying this to me. I just took back what should belong to me, get out of here. Prince Gong's words were very cruel. At least for the Empress Dowager Cixin, it was definitely heartbreaking. The Zonghua Gate, also known as Hongguo Gate and Daking Gate, can only be opened in 3 situations. The first is when the emperor is traveling, the second is when the Engjinbang is released, and the third is when the emperor welcomes his bride. There were as many as 24 empresses in the Daitong dynasty, and the number of concubines was even more difficult to count. Although the emperor had so many concubines, only 5 of them were married and registered through wedding ceremonies. Therefore, since ancient times, only queens who came from the Qing dynasty gate are orthodox, and no matter what mistakes they make, they will never be removed. One of the most uncomfortable things in the heart of the Empress Dowager Shenxi was that even though she was in power, when it came to her origin, she was not a queen who was brought in from the Chinese gate. The old eunuch's face darkened and he glanced sideways. When he saw Su Tong hiding behind him, he snorted, I will leave now, but please leave this person to my servant. The old eunuch claimed to be a slave, but his behavior and the way he spoke showed that he did not take Prince Gong in front of him seriously at all, and reached out to grab Su Tong. You are so impudent, old thief, I think you are looking for death. When Prince Gong saw the old eunuch despising him so much, he suddenly became furious, raised his sword and aimed it at the old eunuch. Ordinarily, given Prince Gong's strength, even if this sword was the divine sword that created the world, it would not be able to hurt the old eunuch even a hair. However, something strange happened at this moment. The blade of the sword waved, and Prince Gong's body swelled with dragon power. In an instant, the figure of the 9th-generation emperor seemed to appear behind him. The following offenders shall be punished. The old eunuch suddenly opened his eyes, opened his mouth and vomited out a large mouthful of blood, with fragments of organs in it. His face was withered, his cheeks were sunken, and his eyes were darkened. He almost fainted. He dodged the sword in a hurry, feeling shocked and angry. He looked at Prince Gong in front of him with a horrified expression and screamed, Impossible, the world is still uncertain, and there is no emperor to rule the country. How can you receive the recognition of all the kings of the past? It's no wonder that the old eunuchs are so fearful. They are eunuchs, servants, and slaves. Even great masters cannot escape the shackles of this level. Since he was castrated and entered the palace, his destiny has been marked with a mark that belongs to the royal family. Naturally, the other young eunuchs couldn't feel it, but he could clearly feel that the aura of the emperors of the past dynasties in Prince Gong was getting stronger and stronger. The dragon roared in the sky, its scales fell off, and a single horn emerged from its head. This turned out to be like retreating from a dragon and transforming into a dragon. Snort. Of course Prince Gong would not tell the old eunuch that a few months ago, an old immortal gave him an idea to arrange a small formation in front of the tombs of past emperors. Even if he has not yet ascended the throne, by virtue of his bloodline, he will be recognized by successive emperors in advance and become the true master of the Daetong dynasty. Although there are some small flaws in this formation, which may disturb the peaceful sleep of the past emperors, Prince Gong doesn't care about this. As long as he sits on the throne, any disturbances or flaws are all trivial. Seeing Prince Gong coming to kill him, the old eunuch looked miserable and was struggling. From the corner of his eye, he saw Su Tong and Gao Zhou, both of whom had disappeared, and he couldn't help but cursed in his heart that he was unlucky. As soon as he flicked his sleeves, a strong wind came out of thin air under his feet, and he jumped up and ran away. As a result, just as the man leaped into the air, the dragon in the sky opened its mouth and sprayed out a beam of lightning. It hit the old eunuch on the head with a thunderbolt. Su Tong looked at the old eunuch falling in mid-air, feeling extremely horrified and his eyes shining brightly. "Quick, follow up and take a look." Gao Zhou was startled and quickly grabbed Su Tong's arm, fearing that he would get sick again this time. "Don't, that's considered a serious injury. He's also a great master. Let's not let him die." Wounding a wolf is the most terrifying moment. Su Tong didn't care about this and kicked Gao Zhou on the butt. "Stop talking nonsense and leave quickly. If you can't beat me, you can still shake him." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 413. Shake People. Su Tong did not explain, but took out a piece of yellow paper from the prop book. The thin yellow paper was quickly folded between his fingers. The speed was incredible, as if a robot had been programmed. Every step, every line, even the number of folds, seems to have been planned between the fingers. Soon 2 doll-sized paper figures were folded out by Su Tong. Putting the 2 paper figures down, Su Tong pinched them with his fingers and saw a thick stack of guide money being thrown into the air. God's Descent Technique. With the activation of the Divine Descending Technique, the guiding money scattered in the air was instantly ignited. At the same time, the 2 dolls trembled slightly, and under Su Tong's expectant gaze, a gloomy black mist gradually emerged, and the black mist enveloped the dolls' faces. For a moment, the expressions on the 2 dolls' faces changed. One was crying, the other was laughing. Li Jingxi, this name is just one word different from Li Jingxi, but their experiences and stories are completely different. He entered the palace at the age of 8, followed the Empress Dowager Shenxi at the age of 13, was awarded the title of second-rank steward at the age of 19, and became the largest eunuch in the palace at the age of 21. Then began more than 30 years of power sharing. Throughout history, let alone eunuchs, even officials, there are very few people who can maintain power in such a short period of time, so quickly, and for such a long time. In the Dark Palace, apart from helping the Queen Mother deal with problems, Li Jingxi was mostly like a piece of wood, wasting away his time guarding the green lantern in the palace. I don't remember when it started. Li Jingxi became obsessed with spiritual practice. He used the resources in the palace and read the classics in the arsenal at will. He could stand there and practice, or he could lie there and practice. It seemed that when the Empress Dowager Shenxi was resting, he would not do anything else except practice. Working hard, but not deliberately. Perhaps for him, practicing is just a fun way to pass the time. Gradually, Li Jingxi discovered that his eyes and ears were becoming more sensitive, his body was getting stronger, and he had entered the realm of a great master without even realizing it. This seems to be what Taoism calls the mind of inaction. After becoming the Grand Master, Li Jingxi rarely did anything to anyone. Only this time, when he saw the Queen Mother's hair turning grey with worry, Li Jingxi finally couldn't bear the impulse in his heart and planned to take action himself. It's just that Li Jingxi is not the male protagonist in the novel, nor is he the sweeping monk in Jin Yang's book. He is just a eunuch, a slave. Therefore, even if Prince Gong is not a great master, or even a first-rate master, the fate that has been imprinted on his life long ago has already determined the gap between the two. In comparison, although the injuries on his body were serious, they were not fatal. However, Prince Gong's fateful attack actually gave him, the great master, a feeling of being wiped out. He climbed up with support from the palace wall, coughing out blood uncontrollably. Li Jingxi fumbled for a pill from his arms, but before he could take it, his eyelids sank and he looked back behind him. It seemed like it was snowing heavily, but what fell was not snowflakes, but pieces of paper. The sky was full of paper money, as if there was a big funeral. Sha-sha-sha. The sound of light footsteps came, and a large number of paper figures were seen walking out of the corner. Accompanied by the sound of suanas, they were eerie and white. They held up funeral flags, paper ox or paper horses to clear the way before sending off the mourners. Their big, fat bodies walked behind, densely packed tentacles were twisting in the air. He held two paper figures in his hands. The appearance of these two boys and girls is particularly exquisite. One is a boy and the other is a girl. They have rosy little faces, one is crying, the other is smiling, and their expressions are lifelike. The nightmarish and terrifying scene made Li Jingxi's heart tighten. He could already see in his pupils that evil spirits were possessing the two paper dolls, and he immediately scolded them harshly, "You are so sneaky and wanton in this forbidden area of the palace. Ha 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 ha. Woo 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 woo." The two dolls were crying and laughing, and the shadows on their bodies were shining brightly. The laughter became more and more sad, and the crying became more and more joyful. The crying ghost and the laughing ghost were naturally summoned by Su Tong using the divine descent technique. It was unclear what level they were at, but he burned all the money in his hand and managed to summon these two. The two dolls opened their mouths and spit out a stream of black mist. In an instant, dark clouds were gathering, sand and rocks were flying, purple thunder was running around in the sky, and the light and death were uncertain. An aura of light emerged from the two dolls and headed towards Li Jingxi. Li Jingxi narrowed his eyelids and was not at all panicked when he saw this. His two fingers condensed 3 inches of sword light, the sword energy roared loudly, and the light at the tip of the sword bloomed into anemones all over the sky. Too little sword energy. It came from Tai Wei Genren of Mount Puchuo in the Ming dynasty and was included in the arsenal in the 13th year of Emperor Kang's reign. It is said that this swordsmanship requires Chunyang Boy Kung Fu to reach its peak. Although Li Jingxi is a boy, he is still a eunuch, and he lacks that masculine spirit. But after years of hard training, the power has not diminished at all. Instead, it has become a bit more feminine. The sword light is like lightning. One sword covers the crying kid. The kid can't dodge. When he sees that he is about to be crushed by the sword light, he suddenly raises his head. A glimmer of light bloomed in his eyes. "Father." Li Jingxi was in a trance for a moment, and then looked at the carefully carved little doll standing in front of him. A childish and silly smile appeared on her chubby little face, and she raised her hands and rushed towards him. Power is overwhelming, with no roots and no heirs. As he grew older, Li Jingxi once fantasized about having a descendant. Seeing other people's families full of children and grandchildren, I have also shown envious eyes. When he heard that the Westerners had a way to make a woman conceive a child without close contact, Li Jingxi was tempted even though the civil and military officials in the court scorned it. Looking at the doll running in front of him, Li Jingxi slowly raised his hands. Puff. Blood splashed in the air, turning into shreds of paper in the air. Li Jingxi expressionlessly held the doll in front of him with its true form in his hand, with neither joy nor sadness on his indifferent face. He had imagined those fantasies countless times while lying in bed. But every time he wakes up, the cold reality tells him that he is a eunuch and he will remain a eunuch until his death. As time passed, this idea was downplayed by Li Jingxi. This kid was able to peek into his inner desires, but ignored his reason. With a casual squeeze, the paper doll's head exploded. Ha 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 ha. At this time, the bursts of laughter became more and more erratic, and the smiling doll disappeared without knowing when. Li Jingxi looked around in confusion, and suddenly his ears felt hot. When he looked again, he saw that there were several young girls on him, naked, wrapped around him. There were waves of seductive sounds coming out of his mouth, and every one of them had an appearance that would captivate a country. Nonsense. Li Jingxi was also amused. After being a eunuch for so many years, he had never expected such treatment. A cold snort came out of his nose, and he roared, and the breath on his body turned into an indescribable dull thunder. There were a series of sounds like a balloon being punctured, and the girl on her body suddenly melted like ice and snow, revealing her bones and internal organs, and finally turned into a pile of ashes and disappeared. Just when everything disappeared, Li Jingxi suddenly heard a childish call in his ear. However, at this moment, Li Jingxi suddenly discovered that the woman wrapped around him disappeared and was replaced by slender tentacles. I saw that the big fat man had wrapped his tentacles tightly around Li Jingxi's body at some point. The body began to expand at the same time, and a red light emitted from the mouth and nose. Not good. Li Jingxi's pupils tightened, and before he could react, his eyes were instantly replaced by a ball of blazing red light. Boom. The air under the high temperature is distorted in a way that is visible to the naked eye. Cough cough cough. A violent coughing sound echoed in the sea of fire. Li Jingxi was seen walking out of the fire, clutching his chest. If there happened to be eunuchs and maids from the palace walking by at this moment, I believe they would not associate the man with disheveled hair and smoke all over his body with the powerful eunuch Li Jingxi. He glanced at the burnt official boots on his feet, and saw that the official boots had been burned to pieces, and the feet inside were also bloody, and even bones could be seen. This was the first time in so many years that Li Jingxi felt such pain. If he had not been seriously injured by Prince Gong, such an injury would not be worth mentioning to him, but now it feels like a handful of salt has been sprinkled on his wounds, making him miserable. He kicked the broken boot away with a random kick. The boot rolled on the ground a few times before being kicked away by the other foot. It's you. Li Jingxi raised his head and looked at Su Tong and Gao Zhou in front of him, feeling shocked and angry for a moment. Mr. Ma, our family really made a mistake. I didn't expect you to be a well-hidden expert. It turns out that you are a tiger father without a dog son. Li Jingxi praised with a smile. Su Tong did not deny it. He watched Li Jingxi with the help of his fate icon. The fate number on Li Jingxi's head was an old pine. The aged pine should be as beautiful as the lush green tobacco leaves and the peeling purple dragon scales from the frosty skin. But at this time, the old pine in Li Jingxi's life was not like this. The pine leaves were scattered, and the tree body seemed to have been struck by thunder and split into two. There were burnt marks everywhere on it, and it was already precariously hanging on the cliff. He was injured, seriously. Whether those two dolls or the big fat one blew himself up, they were just stepping stones to pave the way for himself. After all, with the little money he had to guide the way, he couldn't summon truly powerful ghosts and gods. The Grand Master is very powerful, but Su Tong also wants to try today to see if he can kill the opponent now. The real hunting has just begun at this moment. Seeing the murderous look in their eyes, Li Jingxi smiled instead. Mr. Ma, if you don't take the road to heaven, there is no door to hell to break in. Although our family has been injured, you want to kill us, but I'm afraid it's not enough. Li Jingxi is not bragging, even if he only has one breath left, he is still a veritable grandmaster. It was easy to kill two people. My father-in-law is so powerful that we are no match for him. Su Tong and Gao Zhou looked at each other. They stepped forward and looked directly at Li Jingxi, but we want to give it a try. After saying that, the two of them waved their hands almost at the same time. Control the corpse. Control the paper. In an instant, he looked at the corpse and paper man appearing out of thin air in front of him. Looking at the overwhelming paper people and corpses in front of him, Li Jingxi gradually began to stop laughing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 414. There is a saying in the animal world that in front of elephants, even a group of lions is just a matter of quantity. But in fact, when the number reaches a certain level, not to mention lions, even ants can swallow an elephant. What's more, the elephant itself had been disemboweled and was about to die soon. Corpses slowly climbed up one after another. For the sake of the Grand Master, Gao Zhou spent almost everything he had this time, dedicating all of his family fortune. Su Tong was equally unambiguous. Not only did he summon Big Fatty again, but he also splashed out large pieces of paper figures. These paper figures are not big, each one is only about the size of a palm. But the number is staggering. After upgrading the paper craftsman's book, he has almost no restrictions on the number of paper figures he can control. As long as you can control it, that's fine. And coincidentally, I have Star Eye Tribulation and the Reward Master of Colorful Play that I got after the end of the last script world. The Star Eye Tribulation comes with passive 1, Sensing, which can increase the holder's control ability by 20%. The increase rate of the Master of Colorful Games is even higher. The passive skill Skillful Hands can increase the holder's control ability by 30%. Coupled with the Dark Physique, all of his skills will gain extra high boosts under the night sky. It is not difficult for me to control these paper figures at all. Li Jingxi saw a large number of zombies and paper figures rushing towards him. He was frightened and angry, and decided to fight quickly. He rushed in with his fingers like swords, and he ran straight towards Su Tong and Su Tong. Along the way, the zombies that passed by were unable to withstand even one round, and were cut in half in an instant by the sword light. However, Gao Zhou narrowed his eyelids and gently uttered one word from his lips, explode. The cut corpse seemed to have been injected with high-pressure gas instantly, and the muscles on it swelled irregularly, and then exploded with a bang. Blood and broken bones hit Li Jingxi like bullets, catching him off guard and causing several wounds on his body. At the same time, large swaths of paper figures swarmed in. The lethality of these paper figures was absolutely unable to cause any harm to Li Jingxi, but there were enough of them to form a stream of paper that blocked Li Jingxi's face at all times. You can imagine what it feels like to have hundreds of flies swirling around your head. Even when these paper figures were attached to his face, Li Jingxi felt that he was going crazy. He slapped them from the air, and spider web-like cracks appeared in the space in front of him between the virtual and the real. The paper man hiding in front of him instantly turned into powder. Taking advantage of this moment of free time, Li Jingxi took a look, and instantly felt like his nose was crooked with anger. He saw that Su Tong and Gao Zhou had run away far away. What's even more hateful is that Su Tong continues to throw out paper figures, as if there is no end. In fact, this thing is really worthless. The most it costs is to deduct 2 script points each time. Before I entered the script, I had 2,000 script points, which was a drizzle. But in exchange for that slap from Li Jingxi just now, it was a waste of money. After all, both of him and Gao Zhou might not be able to bear the slap. Fortunately, from the beginning, Su Tong had no intention of confronting the great master. His goal was very clear, which was to drag Li Jingxi into this quagmire step by step. As long as he had no chance to breathe, he would drag Li Jingxi step by step. Exhausted myself. And what they want to play is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Li Jingxi wanted to rush over, but one of his legs was almost disabled and the injuries on his body became more and more serious. After Li Jingxi thought for a moment, he finally realized that he had almost no room for counterattack in the face of Su Tong's shameless tactics. Is there really nothing we can do? Of course not. If it were Shuigui, Xu Mingqing, or even the adult Li Zile, Su Tong and Gao Zhou would simply die with such tricks. But Li Jingxi is not good at it. Although he is a great master and even has a high level of cultivation, his great master is very watertight. He can become a grand master, on the one hand, he has a good mentality, and on the other hand, it is because of the accumulation of resources in the palace. But if you want to talk about actual combat, I'm sorry, whoever is full will fight with a powerful eunuch like him. There were only a handful of cases where Li Jingxi actually fought with people, and they were all the kind that killed a chicken with a bullseye. It is precisely because of the lack of real combat experience that Li Jingxi becomes more passive at this moment. Finally, Li Jingxi's heart surged, and it seemed that he could no longer stand this kind of harassment, or perhaps he was unwilling to sit still and wait for death. Crossing his hands on his chest, he waved his palms with a powerful force and pushed forward with force. Tiangang 12 palms. The origin cannot be traced. There are 12 palms in total. Those who have achieved great success in cultivation can conquer thousands of armies. In the third year of Emperor Jia's reign, it was collected into the arsenal. Li Jingxi was not proficient in this palm technique. He only felt that it was too overbearing and did not match him very well. But at this moment, his heart was welling up, and he didn't care. He slapped his palms out, and the energy in front of him was overwhelming. Bang 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 bang. It was as if a truck traveling at high speed crashed directly into the group of corpses. The corpses in front of them were torn into pieces in the airwaves, and the pieces of paper were shattered into powder. The force of sweeping thousands of armies was simply unstoppable. In an instant, there was a mess in front of them. Su Tong and Gao Zhou were stunned for a second. Looking at the wreckage and broken arms in front of them, they couldn't help but secretly gasped. If this hit them, they would probably be disabled even if they didn't die. Puff. After the slap, Li Jingxi's face turned black, but blood could not stop flowing from his mouth and nose. His triangular eyes stared at Su Tong and Gao Zhou, with resentful eyes that made people feel like they were being targeted by the first venomous snake. Run. Who would have thought that when Su Tong saw this, he left the fat palace behind, took Gao Zhou and ran away, not intending to fight Li Jingxi anymore. I want to run, but is it too late? Without the entanglement between the paper men and the corpses, Li Jingxi was not afraid that the two of them would escape from under his nose, even if one of his legs was missing. Li Jingxi was seen standing upside down, with his arms replacing his feet, and his speed was still astonishingly fast. Su Tong glanced back. At a distance of 100 meters, this guy caught up behind the two of them almost instantly. Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't help complaining, "It's really a loss for the Paralympics if you don't participate in the Paralympics. You bastard, I'll kill you." When Eunuch Li heard this, his expression became even more ferocious, and he raised his hand to grab Su Tong's back. Seeing this, Gao Zhou pushed Su Tong away, his body quickly turned into a corpse, and kicked Li Jingxi on the head. As a result, instead of injuring Li Jingxi opened his mouth and spat out a bloody arrow that penetrated his chest. Gao Zhou swayed, and a blood arrow tore a 3-finger-long gash in his chest. However, what Li Jingxi didn't expect was that after the blood arrow penetrated Gao Zhou's chest, Gao Zhou, instead of retreating, punched Li Jingxi on the lower back. Click. Li Jingxi's eyes widened, and the sharp pain on his spine made his arms go limp, and his lower body also went limp. His body lost its center of gravity and fell heavily to the ground. Su Tong's face turned gloomy. There was also a wound on his chest, and bright red blood was flowing out from the wound. It turns out that the reason why Gao Zhou was able to withstand this blood arrow was not only because he quickly transformed into a corpse to enhance his own resistance, but also because Su Tong shared most of the damage for him. Protector. Active Skill 1, Righteousness. It consumes 30 script points. After activation, when there are more than 2 teammates within 30 meters of you, the damage you receive will be shared equally. There was a burst of dust flying. Li Jingxi turned over, managed to get up from the ground, pointed at Gao Zhou and flicked his finger, and a sword energy struck him. Even though Gao Zhou reacted quickly, his sword light almost split him in half. Eunuch Li. At this time, Su Tong's voice made Li Jingxi turn around, and saw Su Tong folding his hands on his chest and bowing to him heavily. Huh. Li Jingxi was a little confused when he saw this. He didn't know if this guy suddenly worshipped him. Could he be asking for mercy? However, the next second, Li Jingxi noticed something was wrong. A crack opened behind him. With the roar of war horses, a cavalryman unexpectedly rushed out from behind him, and the war horses trampled heavily on his back. Puff! The horseshoes hit one after another, making Li Jingxi feel like his internal organs were about to shift, and his face turned black and purple from the pain. Su Tong succeeded with one blow, grabbed Gao Zhou and ran away. While running wildly, I didn't forget to take a look at Li Jingxi's fate. As expected of an evergreen pine, it was about to be broken in half, but Li Jingxi was still holding on to his breath. This made Su Tong once again refresh his view on the vitality of the Grand Master. Not to mention a breath, even half a breath left, Su Tong did not dare to risk his life, and pulled Gao Zhou all the way to the direction of Qin Tian prison. Anyway, the old eunuch would not live long. The worst he could do was run into the second floor of the Qintian prison. Once the door was closed, he waited until the main mission was over before coming out again. He wasn't afraid that he wouldn't be able to survive this old eunuch. However, before the two of them could enter the courtyard of Qintian prison, they bumped into a group of people. This group of people wore the unique clothing of the White Lotus sect and held swords in their hands. The middle-aged man at the head was wearing a white robe and a Taoist crown on his head. What Su Tong didn't expect was that Li Ro was also there. When the group saw Su Tong and Gao Zhou, they were stunned for a moment. But soon someone came to his senses. "It's Ma Hongwen, chop this beast to death." Gao Zhou curled his lips when he saw this. "Tou, have you activated that mocking doll? Why are there people everywhere coming to chop you?" "Fart, I haven't activated it yet," Su Tong cursed. Seeing this group of people rushing forward, Su Tong's ears twitched, and he pulled Gao Zhou to rush forward. As he rushed, he shouted, "Eunuch Li, the rebels are all here." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Jingxi chased after him. Everyone was startled when they saw the disheveled guy rushing up behind them. After all, Li Jingxi's appearance at the moment was really eye-catching. However, he was wearing official uniform and he immediately went to kill Li Jingxi. However, at this moment, the Taoist standing behind raised his eyelids and said, "No, get out of the way." After the words fell, the Taoist figure was seen rushing in front of Li Jingxi, wielding a long sword in his hand, and the blade was actually in the air. A full moon-like sword light slipped out of it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 416. Li Jingxi never expected that such a powerful figure would suddenly appear, and he hurriedly put his hands across his chest. But again, although Li Jingxi is a great master, he is too watery. For other masters, the fight between life and death would be determined to fight to the death. At worst, half of your soul would be sacrificed if you risked your life, but he chose to block. Who is Gu Changfeng? The leader of the White Lotus, a well-known top master in the world. Upon seeing this, he turned his sword and everyone could only see a bright silver light, like a galaxy falling down a waterfall. In an instant, Li Jingxi felt that in front of him in a flash, a heart-wrenching tingling sensation in my chest surged through my body like a tide. It was only when he lowered his head that he realized that his chest had been ripped open and his heart had turned into a huge hole. The terrifying opponent in front of him had already sheathed his sword and stood watching him coldly. Only then did Li Jingxi realize something, but his consciousness quickly blurred. This powerful eunuch finally closed his eyes. Gu Changfeng glanced at the corpse, then turned to Su Tong and Gao Zhou. As both great masters, Gu Changfeng gave the two of them completely different feelings from Li Jingxi. Just a glance made the two of them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave, their bodies were covered with ice, and they did not dare to move. It seemed that if they moved, they would end up being shattered into pieces. All the White Lotus cultists put their swords on their necks. Su Tong and Gao Zhou looked at each other. We surrender. Bah, you are a scum like you. If you still want to live, I will kill you. The bearded elder came over with a big knife and planned to open Su Tong's head. Don't kill him. Lero finally came to her senses at this moment, squeezed in from the crowd, stopped in front of Su Tong, looked at Gu Changfeng and said, "Don't kill him, he is very good to me, don't kill him. Being nice to you doesn't necessarily mean you are a good person." Gu Changfeng obviously didn't have a good impression of Ma Hongwen. Wait. Seeing this, Su Tong hurriedly said, "My father, Ma Qi, is the Admiral of the Nine Gates. Your Tien, we are the White Lotus sect, no matter what you do, we will kill those who ride horses." The bearded man held up a big knife, wishing he could chop off this kid's head and play it as a ball. "Wait a minute, Admiral of the Nine Sections." Gu Changfeng stopped the bearded man and looked at Su Tong. "If you didn't tell me, I would have forgotten that your father is Ma Qi, the Admiral of the Nine Sections." Yes, I am Ma Qi's only son. If you arrest me, my father must listen to you. If you want to rebel, no, it is to restore the Ming dynasty. Isn't this an excellent opportunity now? Keep it for now and kill the one next to it." As soon as Gu Changfeng said this, Gao Zhou on the side almost cursed him. He wouldn't have treated him so differently. "Wait, you can't kill him," Su Tong shouted quickly. Gu Changfeng narrowed his eyelids and placed his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist. "He is the apprentice of Qin Tian prison. He is the only one who knows how to open the secret door of Qin Tian prison." As soon as these words came out, Gu Changfeng sneered, "Just an apprentice? But there is only one apprentice left in Qintian prison. Master Yang from Lianshan Temple was dead last time, and Master Fu also disappeared. Now he is the only apprentice in Qintian prison. If you kill him, Qintian prison will never again." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. This was completely different from what they thought. Gu Changfeng counted with his fingers, and sure enough, he didn't come up with a result. Su Tong was relieved when he saw this. These people were obviously going in the direction of Qintian prison. Although they didn't know what they wanted to do, using this matter as a bargaining chip was obviously betting in the right direction. "Take him with you to see what happens first." After Gu Changfeng finished speaking, he glanced at Su Tong. "If you dare to lie, the White Lotus sect still retains 28 kinds of torture, and you will not be able to escape any of them." "Certainly." Su Tong nodded heavily, patted his chest and assured Gu Changfeng. "Sir, are you okay?" Lero pushed away the knife on Su Tong's neck and asked Su Tong. "It's okay, why are you here?" Su Tong shook his head and looked at Lero in front of him. He couldn't help but remember that those signals were coming from his own direction. Although he had a guess in his mind, he still wanted to confirm it with Lero. Lero briefly explained the matter in a low voice. It was just as she had guessed. It was Gu Changfeng who brought her out of the house. But what Lero said next made Su Tong freeze on the spot. "When they brought me out, I saw that smelly Taoist priest who seemed to be fighting with an old man. The old man seemed unable to defeat him. He cut off one of his arms and then disappeared. Grandpa? Mr. Wen Yuan. Su Tong paused for a moment. Young master. Lero called out softly when she saw that Su Tong looked wrong. Fine. Su Tong waved his hand and glanced at Gu Changfeng's back. Gu Changfeng seemed to be aware of it. He looked back and saw Su Tong holding Lero's little hand, talking and laughing. He snorted coldly and continued walking forward. When everyone arrived at Kintian prison, Gu Changfeng signaled for everyone to go in and search. After searching around, it turned out that no one was there. Look and see where the rising dragon picture is. Gu Changfeng signaled everyone to start searching. These White Lotus cultists are not gentle people. They raise their arms and start turning over. As long as it is not the target they are looking for, they will be thrown to the ground. They don't care at all. These casually discarded books and scrolls may be treasures compiled by the previous generation after spending several years or even more than 10 years of hard work. Su Tong glanced sideways at the vermilion door on the side, walked to Gao Zhou calmly, stretched out his hand and thrust the 2 keys into Gao Zhou's hand. Gao Zhou got the key and put it into his pocket calmly. Seeing Su Tong glance at the top of his head from the corner of his eye, he immediately nodded with understanding. What kind of garbage is this? A believer picked up a yellowed book from the bookshelf and threw it on the ground. Seeing this, Gao Zhou took a deep breath and walked forward quickly. Stop, what you are looking for, the rising dragon picture is definitely not here. Who would put such an important treasure in this place? Stop it. Gao Zhou said as he pushed a believer away and used his body to protect the books on the bookshelf. Gu Changfeng waved his hand to signal everyone to stop. Walked up to Gao Zhou, then tell me, where is the thing I'm looking for? Up there. Gao Zhou swallowed and looked at the top of his head. Above. Everyone looked above their heads, and then someone finally spotted the inconspicuous staircase next to it. Master, there is a ladder here. Gu Changfeng stepped forward and took a look. Sure enough, it led to the attic, but at the end of the stairs was a closed door. He walked to the door and tentatively opened his palms, trying to push the door open. However, he found that his strength hit the door, and it seemed as if it was sinking into the sea. Obviously it is unrealistic to open the door violently. Gu Changfeng looked back at Gao Zhou. Gao Zhou immediately took out the key Su Tong gave him and stepped forward to open the door. Wait a moment. Seeing this, Gu Changfeng raised his hand to stop Gao Zhou from stepping forward, and pointed at Su Tong, come on. Su Tong asked with a surprised look on his face, then shook his head and wanted to hide behind. But someone on the side saw Su Tong's distasteful beard, grabbed Su Tong's collar and pushed him forward. The leader asked you to open the door. Why are you hiding behind? Go quickly, or I will chop off your head now. Seeing the bearded man shaking the bright sword in his hand, Su Tong could only lower his head, reluctantly took the key from the high table and walked to the door. The 2 keys were not exactly the same. One looked like a normal key, but the other looked like a brand. Su Tong held the key in his hand and thought about it. I don't know how to use this thing. Gu Changfeng held the 2 keys in his hand, looked at them for a moment, and twisted his fingers on the iron plate. The iron plate actually cracked. When Gu Changfeng saw this, he twisted his fingers a few times, and the iron plate turned into a handful. Key. Is this still possible? Su Tong watched Gu Changfeng hand over the key again, and took it over in surprise. Open the door. As Gu Changfeng spoke, he took a step back, but put his other hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist. As long as Su Tong makes a slight movement, his body and head can be separated in such a short distance in an instant. Ka. The 2 keys were inserted into the door pin at the same time, and the door also made a crisp friction sound. Click. The door was slowly pushed open. Su Tong carefully put his head in and looked around for a while. Wow, there are so many things here. As he said this, he walked in first. In order to prevent Su Tong from cheating, Gu Changfeng walked in right behind him. As soon as he looked at it, his eyes suddenly showed a look of surprise. There are densely packed books on the bookcase in front of you. It is obvious that this is the real treasure house of Qintian prison. Gu Changfeng walked to the bookcase and glanced at the book placed on it. Feng Shui Secret Technique 36 Symbols Star Chart. His eyes suddenly became hot. It is said that the Feng Shui directions of some emperors' tombs echo the star map in the sky. The content in this book may be the map of the emperors' tombs in the world. Immediately when he looked at the other side, Gu Changfeng's breathing became rapid. Pictures of the Great Funeral of Ghost Works. This book has been lost for a long time. According to rumors, it records the design of strange burials in the world. It not only contains the magical caves in the world, but also the corresponding strange burial methods, in order to achieve the purpose of dismembering the corpse and turning it into an immortal. These two books alone are extraordinary. What's more, there are all kinds of strange ancient books stored on the bookshelf in front of you, each one is priceless. Ha ha ha, the Manchus are ridiculous targets. So many treasures are left here to be secretly cast, and they are also engaged in new Western learning. It is really stupid. When Gu Changfeng made a sarcastic comment, his eyes suddenly fixed and he stared intently at the painting hanging on the wall. In the painting, I saw a golden dragon passing through the clouds and crossing the sea, spitting out thunder and lightning, and a dragon ball hanging above its head, blooming with streaks of divine light. The painter was so lifelike that it seemed as if the dragon was about to fly out of the scroll at any time. But the strange thing is that this dragon has no eyes. Rising Dragon Picture. When Gu Changfeng saw the painting, he couldn't help but blush. He quickly stepped forward and wanted to take off the painting. However, the moment Gu Changfeng reached out to pick up the painting, the look on his face changed. From behind the scroll, a bloody figure rushed out like lightning and slapped Gu Changfeng on the heart.